The Honda CRF110. Big fun in a little package. As indestructible as this bike is, there's going to come a time where the bike's just not going to run right for you. So to keep the kids chasing after you in the yard and having a good time, we're going to need to clean the carburetor on this bike. So in this video, we're going to do just that. First step is going to be to turn off the gas. Next, we're going to remove the gas line from the carburetor. Then we're going to remove the vent tube from the side of the carburetor. This is the tube that drains the fuel if the bike tips over. Using a Phillips head screwdriver, loosen the clamp connecting the air intake to the carburetor. Next, let's remove the two 8mm bolts that connect the carburetor to the manifold. There's two of these, one on each side. This next part's a little tricky. Got to reach down through the shroud and unscrew the carburetor cap for the throttle cable. Slide it up and out of the carburetor and move it to the side. This next part's a little tricky as well. We're going to remove the choke cable from the mechanism on the carburetor. Just slide that cable off of there, and also you're going to need to disconnect the cable from the carburetor mount. Now let's wiggle the carburetor off of the air intake hose and slide it out of the bike. For the next part, we're going to go ahead and clean the carburetor. My favorite cleaning spray right now is this Nihilo CEV16 spray. Works really good for just about everything. After we get the carb thoroughly cleaned, we're going to go ahead and start removing some of the components, starting with the idle adjustment screw. This screw just adjusts the idle. It controls the height of that throttle slide. Next, let's remove the two bolts that hold on the float bowl. These are just Phillips head bolts. Be careful not to strip these. They tend to be pretty soft sometimes, and sometimes they're on there pretty tight. Having the appropriate screwdriver certainly helps. Go ahead and crack that float bowl open and let any remaining gas that's in the float bowl drip down into a container, or just take it outside and let it drip on the ground somewhere. Let's go ahead and remove the jets from the carburetor. These are two brass colored circular cylinders. One is for the idle and one is the main jet. These are usually the things that get clogged and cause the bike to not run properly. So these are our primary targets inside the carburetor. I just throw them in a little container and then usually submerge them in my cleaning spray. Lastly, we're going to pull the pin out of the float and just pull it up and out of the way. And now comes the fun part, where we get to blast out every orifice and port in the carburetor with the cleaning spray. That dirt down there was already in the bowl, so it didn't actually come from the carb. I also use a little acid brush and make sure to get all the residue. At some point in this process, you're going to stick this hose into one of these ports or orifices, and you're going to blast yourself right in the face, like I did. And I do every time when I clean out a carburetor. It's just part of the fun. And as a bonus tip, you know you have a good cleaning spray when it burns the eyes for more than 30 minutes. So you just want to make sure there's no sand and no debris in any of these little ports. Some of them aren't actually circuits that pass air or fuel. Some of them are overflow ports. Also, there's idle air passageways, all sorts of fun little stuff inside this magical little piece we call a carburetor. After we get the body of the carburetor cleaned out, we can then move on to cleaning the jets, and in this case, the idle adjustment screw, which I just brush off because there's no orifices. On the main and idle jets, though, there are orifices, and this tool that I'm using, it's a little bit blurry in this shot, but it's a carburetor cleaning tool, and it's really just a set of wires, stiff wires that you can use to poke through the jets and make sure that they're clear of debris. Most likely it is a small piece of dirt or sand on these small carburetors that will clog them, so this tool helps poke that stuff out. And of course you spray it after to make sure the spray goes through it, and that proves that you have that orifice clean. And also there's little holes on this main jet too that I think it's called an emulsifier tube. Can't remember. Just make sure everything's clear. Don't forget the fuel stopper valve too. If the fuel is overflowing out of your carb, this is most likely the problem. It's always a good idea to brush out the inside of the bowl to make sure there's no residue, and then from there just clean it out. That should be ready to go. Now that everything's clean, we get to reassemble the carb in no specific order. I usually start with the jets. Put the idle jet in, that's the smaller one, and then you can put the main jet in, however you want to do it. Just don't tighten these jets too much. They'll most likely split right down the middle or get stripped out. Then you put the fuel stopper valve back in the float, and you can slide this right into the little spot there. It's important this is oriented correctly though. Slide the pin into the float, that locates it, keeps it held onto the carb body. Oh yeah, she ain't going nowhere. A carb building habit of mine is to always grease up or lubricate the seal or O-ring on the float bowl. This is because I've seen a fair number of old carbs have cracked or dry rotted seals, and it just feels if you lubricate it with spray oil or grease that it just might last a little bit longer and avoid sticking to the carb body when you do pull it off, which could cause it to rip or tear and cause you lots of headaches and have to buy a carb rebuild kit too. And we just tighten up the 2 screws to the float ball. Don't go crazy or you'll strip the heads for sure. We get the idle adjustment screw in there somehow. There it is. And I usually tighten this all the way and back it out a turn or two just as a guess. And then you sit back, admire your work, you're ready to put it back in the bike. So now we wonder if I just reverse the installation videos or I film the reinstallation. You be the judge. Now that you've pondered that, I suppose I could offer a little bit of advice here. Basically, don't tighten these 2 bolts too much. It'll be a bad time if you strip them. They don't need a lot of torque. I don't remember the torque, but not much more than a 1/4 inch ratchet's going to provide you. Try to tighten these equally, as it is an air seal to the manifold. Yep, give that a tug. That ain't going nowhere. We tighten up that clamp on the bottom, getting close to the end here. And let me tell you, you don't know fun until you have your hands backwards trying to allow the camera to get the shot while twisting around and putting this throttle slide in the wrong way several times. And basically, make sure that slot is on the right side. Try to contort your arms to twist that in there. It's probably going to be easier if you don't have a camera. Let me just get her nice and tight and move on to the next pane. Editing out all my failures makes this look really easy, but it's not. Yeah, that ain't going nowhere. Things are starting to get exciting as we reattach the fuel line from the fuel tank. Don't forget the little clamp there. Editing made this look easy too. Slide that baby towards the front. Give it a tug. Yeah, that ain't going nowhere. Is it? Nah. Get that overflow vent hose back on there, and you are officially done. Now you get to go test it out and have some fun. Oh, wait. Did I forget to turn on the gas? Nah. Alright, so now we're going to start it up and make sure that the carb is working right. And then we're going to adjust the idle, and it should be good to go from there. Okay, so we just had to turn the idle screw about a half turn. I had it pretty close just by guessing, and she started right up, basically first kick. So we're going to shake it down around the track for a couple laps, see if it's bogging out still, and then should be good to go from there. right, so the Carb Clean was all completed, and we tested it on the track. Had some good fun. Definitely works a lot better. Starts first kick. Had to adjust the idle once. Typically, when you start up the bike after a fresh Carb Clean, the idle is going to be different than where you've left off before you cleaned it. So typically, we adjust it one time, and after riding it around and getting the RPMs up, it changes a little bit. It ends up idling a little bit higher. So that's what it was doing, and we adjusted it back down, and all seems well. So hope that was helpful for you. It's a really easy bike to work on. It's one of the easiest carb cleaning processes that I've come across on all my bikes. So nice easy access there. So hope this helps you out. If you liked it, sure to subscribe, like the video, and check out all my other stuff. Got a bunch of cool motorcycle things on the channel. So see you later.